Mr. Wittman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us today. Thanks so much for your service to our nation. Secretary Austin, last March, Indo-PACOM Commander Phil Davidson said that he saw that China is making every preparation for a confrontation over Taiwan by 2027. Current Indo-PACOM Commander Admiral Aquilino said the same thing. Former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo agreed. In fact, General Milley has previously stated this: we're going to have a much larger fleet than we have today. If we're serious about great power competition and deterring great power war, and if we're serious about dominant capability over something like China or some other power that has significant capability. Secretary Austin, do you agree that we should be preparing for a showdown with Taiwan in this decade?
I agree that we should have the right capabilities to be able to not only be relevant in deterring future adversaries, but also dominant on a future battlefield. And we are investing in those capabilities in this budget.
Very good. Thank you. General Milley, the Navy today has 297 ships, and this budget request will reduce our fleet to 280 by 2027. If you look at where we are in relation to the Chinese, our budget and number of ships have shrunk continually over the past 2 decades. We have gone from 318 ships down to 297 today. During the same period of time, China has gone from 210 ships to 360 ships. DOD's budget will further shrink that to 280. DOD's own China Power Report projects that China will have 460 ships by 2030. In this latest budget request, the Navy proposes to retire 24 ships and build 8 ships. I'm not a mathematician, but it seems like to me you can't do addition by subtraction. This seems to be grossly irresponsible and completely denies the reality of what we are facing. General Milley, in your professional military judgment, does our shipbuilding plan accurately reflect the investments that we need to make in naval capacity and capabilities that we need to deter the Chinese in the years and decades to come?
Well, let me make a couple of comments, Congressman. Thank you for that. First, I think it's important to focus on capability. So capacity matters, numbers matter, mass matters, and I'm on board with all that, but capability matters. And the ships that we're retiring, the 20-some-odd, the 2 dozen ships that are coming out of the inventory in this particular budget, the Navy has assessed those, very high maintenance costs, high to sustain, and the cost is exceeding the benefit of those ships staying on active duty sort of thing. And the 9 ships that we're procuring, the capability of those ships is the most modern in the fleet. So, you know, the capability versus capacity argument's there. I'm always in favor of greater numbers. I think that's great, but I would bias towards capability rather than just sheer numbers. It is a fair argument about the number of ships the Chinese have, and it even gets worse if you think about our global commitment versus, say, the U.S. fleet that's in the Western Pacific or in the Pacific. The ratios are even worse. But again, it's capability versus capacity, and I'd caution folks to go down into the detail about what our ships can do, what the training of our sailors can do, what our tactics are, what our technologies are on our ships. I think there's a fundamental and significant advantage to us relative to China on that capability.
Well, General Milley, I don't deny that our ships are great, our sailors are great. But you do have to look at this in terms of magnitude. Quantity has a quality all of its own.
Don't disagree.
And if we're going down to 280 and they're at 460, our great ships can only be in one place at one time. They can only engage so many targets. I have a hard time figuring out how the trajectory of China going in this direction and the trajectory of the United States going in the opposite direction, it's almost impossible to make an argument to say that we're going to build enough capability in 9 ships to displace the Chinese, and that 9 ships are going to be able to replace the capacity and capability in 24 ships. You know, like I said, I'm not a mathematician, but just seems like to me you can't do addition by subtraction.
Yeah, I'm not going to get in a big argument about it because I'm on the side of mass matters, quantity has a quality element, and so on, et cetera. But you can't buy everything, you can't be everything to everyone at all times, right? So there has to be a balance in the budget, and I think this particular budget is divesting, and the Navy's done, I think, some really quality analysis there. They are divesting of ships that are of marginal utility in a future combat environment against China and investing in the 9 ships that do have great quality. And
Gentleman's time has expired. I will say we also, on